Hi there. I wanted to do a video as well on the situation in the Ukraine because it's so tremendously important. It's a strategically important place. It's a country that has nuclear weapons, I think. Um, and I didn't have a very good understanding of what was going on there, which meant that I had clearer opinions. Now that I've learned a bit more, my opinions are not quite so clear. The one thing I hope is that the outsiders, the Russians, the European Union, the US, don't cause trouble because it's clear to me that the main forces behind the anti-government demonstrations and those people, that they're not so interested in Russia or the European Union or the United States. Those are not their primary concerns. It seems to me to be very much a nationalistic, almost like an uprising, and and of course, listening to Russian sources like Echo Moskvy and reading a variety of sources on the internet, I get a perspective that's different from what I get out of a simplified article in my local newspaper. But it seems to me, and I could be totally wrong on this. This is based on a few hours of listening and investigating, that the leading forces of the sort of demonstrators, the best organized, the most powerful, are this right sector, which is a very nationalistic, militantly nationalistic organization, and the Svoboda or Freedom Party, which is also very nationalistic, and in addition to being nationalistic, appears to be quite xenophobic. And these are the ones that are the best organized. Very often in any kind of a revolutionary situation, it'll be the best organized who come to the fore, and everyone else kind of just tags along and doesn't have very much power. And so, the danger here is, and so their agenda is nationalism, but then what? The country's just about bankrupt. And of course, part of the reason I was going to say too that a lot of my traditional perceptions of, the Western Ukraine being nationalist, more Ukrainian nationalist, the Eastern Ukraine being more closer to Russia, I'm not sure how true that is. There was an interview, or not an interview, there was a discussion on Echo Moskvy of this Dmitry Yarosh, who is this enigmatic leader of the right sector. He's from the Eastern Ukraine. The Eastern and Southern Ukraine are the areas that suffered the most from the tremendous famines that were essentially engineered by the Soviets in the 30s to requisition grain and to destroy the power of the more independent peasants. And while the Ukrainians suffered disproportionately, areas of Russia also suffered. But in the sort of Ukrainian independent or nationalistic mythology, ideology, it's presented as a genocide directed primarily at them. So you have all these Eastern Ukrainians who feel that they were victimized by the Russians. So I don't know how pro-Russian those people are. I have no idea. The Western Ukrainians, of course, were under Poland until 1939, when that was annexed by the Soviets under the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. But when they were under the Poles were definitely suppressing Ukrainian nationalism, and as a result, after the Germans marched in for a brief period, the Ukrainian nationalists in the Western Ukraine massacred tens of thousands of Polish women and children, and men presumably as well, and were very xenophobic, anti-Russian, Polish, Jewish, you name it. And this group is sort of the ideological inspiration for these nationalist organizations in the Ukraine today. So it's all a little bit complicated. And then you have Russia, and my impression from listening to Russians is they don't really want to recognize the separate nationalist aspirations of the Ukrainians. To them, and if you go back far enough in history, of course, Kiev is considered the mother of Russian cities, and they kind of feel, well, we're all the same, we're one big family, historically we're together, and then for a variety of historical reasons, separated. So the Russians don't have much sympathy for Ukrainian nationalism and see the Ukraine more in terms of its position as part of the Russian kind of geopolitical aspirations of wanting to reestablish this group of countries that or that space that was once part of Tsarist Russia. So all of these things are playing into it, and of course it's complicated by the fact that the present government, or the government of Yanukovych, I guess he's no longer, I don't know where he is so corrupt, or was so corrupt. He was elected quite fairly in 2010, but since he's been in power, his son has become one of the richest people in the Ukraine. Apparently, according to some sources, has 50% of government contracts. And all of a sudden, since his dad's in power, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And a lot of the oligarchs who supported Yanukovych and was hoping that he would be their puppet now are disenchanted with him because he's moved a lot of assets over to his son. And so these people, in fact, are in favor of getting closer to the European Union so they could have that economic, association and strengthen their position vis-a-vis the government. But I think the average protester on the Maidan Square in Kiev seems to be controlled by the nationalists. This is my interpretation, and I don't really see a solution. I think it's going to be a very dicey. My hope is that the Russians, the Europeans, and the Americans don't start fighting each other or don't start disagreeing with each other, but work together somehow to encourage some kind of peaceful settlement. But I have the impression that's going to be a very, very difficult task. So I talk about this because, as I say, I got involved in listening to stuff on Echo Moskvy in Russian, which piqued my interest. I also had a comment from someone in Russian on my YouTube channel who made me aware that some of the forces there, that my interpretation of the situation was a bit simplistic. So I did a bit more research. And I'm going to continue to listen. And I just want to point out as well that very often, quote, patriotic Russians tell me that I shouldn't listen to Echo Moskvy, that they're anti-patriotic or anti-Russian or Russophobe or all this stuff. But actually there's a variety of stuff there. There are people who are way out to lunch, whose opinions that they don't influence me, but there's a whole range of opinions. Somewhat anti-government for sure, and I think the fact that such a radio station exists is a demonstration of the fact that Russia is not China. There is actually freedom of expression. As long as you don't get too big or too powerful, there's freedom of expression, and which is a good thing. At any rate, I'm used to listening to them. I go there. If I found another Russian source of audio and text material that had independent opinions, presented a variety of opinions, I'd go there too. But I do enjoy Echo Moskvy. And that's it. And I look forward to your comments. Bye for now.